All right. Became the Steve Orlando of comics because there's another very patient video game programmer who has my name as well. So in order to differentiate our emails long ago, I had to become the Steve Orlando.
You had to become the Steve Orlando.
Well, I mean, otherwise we would just be receiving each other's emails.
Heavier are the shoulders.
I'm sorry. In perpetuity. I mean, it still happens sometimes anyway, because people think that I'm just kidding about that being my emails. But if you email steveorlando@gmail.com, it will not reach me. It'll reach a very patient other Steve Orlando.
At least you don't have, my buddy's name is Max Weinberg, and he works in music. And the amount of emails he gets thinking that he's being emailed of Max Weinberg of Bruce Springsteen's brand is he gets many emails about that.
It's probably significant.
So I just want to welcome you, gentlemen, for joining me today to talk about this publishing company that started and how it all got started. But we have Medney, and we have Jim Kruger and the Steve Orlando joining us today to talk about probably the hardest thing I'm going to try to pronounce. Gungnir.
Yeah, it's the staff of Odin.
Awesome. Okay, who came up with the name? I got to ask that.
That guy. I'm pointing to Medney, depending on how the grids go.
I'm a big fan of Norse mythology, and I'm a big fan of Odin, and the spear Gungnir that Odin uses. He never misses his mark, and Odin himself is the god of poetry in Norse mythology. So we thought it was very apropos that the staff of Odin would be our namesake.
Okay, I like that. So give me a little bit of behind the scenes. How did you three gentlemen get together? How did this come about? How long have you been planning this? For people that are new to the Gungnir books, which I want to show off here in a little bit, a couple of them that I got in. But yeah, how did all this start?
Yeah, I'll start it and then let Jim and Steve add color. So I used to run.
I'm going to interrupt and give you a more detailed prompt. You know everybody in the business, and you know everybody in the music business too. So not only how did this get started, but how did you settle on me and Jim? Of the entire rogues gallery that I know.
You know what? I don't know if I'm even ready to hear the answer to that question.
We're ready, man.
We're
diving in. We're going to give them the new content, the meaty content they're looking for. Yeah. Blood red. Let's go.
This is a family show. Omar brings his kids on the show. We need to be careful.
I do bring my kids on the show, but they're not here right now. We're here to talk about the Spear of Odin and how it came to be.
So some people may or may not know I used to run Heavy Metal Magazine a handful of years ago. And when I left Heavy Metal, I wanted to start my own new publisher. As Steve had alluded to, I've done a handful of things in the music and comics IP world, having made graphic novels for like Shaggy and Chance the Rapper, Meek Mill, 311, a handful of guys of that ilk as well. And I started working on a book with Steve Aoki, and that's where Jim and I met in the crucible of creating Hero Quest volumes 1 and 2. And yeah, that was just an amazing experience where you either come out of it as blood brothers or absolutely hate each other. And I think we came out blood brothers. It was, we had to make, what was it, Jim, 170-page book in 100 days.
Yeah, it was just unbelievable. I mean, we're blood brothers, he and I, but you know what? There's still blood that I'm trying to clean off.
Exactly. And then Steve and I met at my tenure at Heavy Metal. Amazing creator himself, as everybody on this live stream knows. And, I'm just honored that both of them would listen to my crazy ideas and antics to try to create this publisher where we're really focusing on science fiction, a little bit of fantasy, and just creating stories that are great conversation starters. All of our books, the idea is to create something where you want to have a debate with a friend on a Friday evening with some beers, be the prompt to ideas and knowledge transfer, and doing it in a way that has a great story akin to Asimov and H.G. Geiger. and a handful of the other. H.G. Wells, World Set Free, something that Steve showed me. It was the first book to ever use the word atomic in it, far before the use of atomic bomb. There's another book called Across the Zodiac that the first use of the word astronaut is in it from the 1800s. So creating science fiction that is used to think about how the future can be shaped is really the impetus of what we're trying to do here at Gungnir.
Okay, man, that is some deep philosophical look at comics. I love this, and from Heavy Metal Magazine. That's awesome. So you have quite a history with a lot of folks from the music industry and the comic industry, and I always think comics and music and wrestling kind of all go together in a way. I have a lot of viewers that are huge fans of wrestling and also fans of comics, and then huge fans of music and comics. So I think it kind of all goes.
Steve knows that better than most.
But where is
Steve knows that intersection of comics and wrestling?
I've been living at it for the past 40 years. So yeah.
See, now you guys you're inspiring me to want to write the adaptation of a wrestling musical.
A wrestling musical? How's that? And then has that already happened, Jim?
No, it hasn't.
How has that not happened already?
There's an opera. But I don't know that there's a musical. So the window is right there, Jim. You could step in.
Oh my gosh.
That's Jim's next magnum opus.
So now that you guys are settled on a group, how do you decide? Okay, let's do our own publishing company. Let's do some stories of our own that we want to call our own, without going to places like Dark Horse or Image Comics. How was that decided?
I would say I've always disliked the idea of other people telling me what's good. What's good enough to make. I'd rather take a small team of individuals that I trust and appreciate their perspective, and if we're all aligned on something, go out and make it, and not having any sort of other overlords involved. So it was an easy business to believe in that we can create a bunch of stories and books that would be not just fun reads, but also worth buying.
And I know Jim and Steve have worked for the different companies over the years, and I assume that when you're doing your own thing, you have that sense of freedom.
Yeah, I'll let Steve answer that, because I've never worked for the big.
So there is the sense of freedom, but as you said, why not Dark Horse or Image, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Like on the creator side, those are both places where you own your IP 100% as well, at least in most cases. So for me, it was not necessarily that. I could get the freedom elsewhere. For me, it was a little different, maybe, than the other folks' answers. For 10 years, I've been sitting here in the business, talking about what editing is, talking about what I would like a company to be. I've worked with a couple exceptions at nearly every publishing company that there is right now, which is not a brag. It's actually a product of what you make as a freelance writer. But the point is, it's always, they shouldn't be doing this, they should be doing that, so on and so forth. So for me, when Matt came to me to start something new, the freedom, look, the reality is, like, I could get the freedom creatively as a writer elsewhere, but it was like time to put up or shut up. When he came to me and said, do you want to be executive editor, or, what kind of a position would you like? I'm a person that likes to back up what he says. So for me, like, if I've been complaining about what editorial should and shouldn't be for the past decade, well, it's time to offer that. It's time to put that into practice. And so for me, yes, it was the freedom, but also the chance to make good on a lot of things that I've been talking about for, even before I was working professionally. And that's what it's been. I try to I have the editorial philosophy that at least I wish I was always given. I'm often given, but always given as a creator. and it's been rewarding to do. But so for me, it wasn't just the freedom, because that is not, while it is possible at Gungnir, that's not the only publisher. We're not the only publisher that offers that. But for me, there was a chance for me to finally say, look, listen, I'm not just gonna rant about this or run my mouth. I'm going to actually do something, and we're gonna. And it's not just that. It's a decade of being in comics and seeing this push for new voices, representation, and all these things, and that's important. But a lot of things that I've seen happen, in that time, it's kind of like dropping people in the deep end, and you can't do that. If you want to be fostering these new voices and things like that, well, even there, just look at my word choice. You have to foster them. You can't just hire them up from a position where they've never necessarily worked on this scale of publishing or this style of publishing, or under the demands of the modern publishing market, and say, here you go, kid, like, you're in, welcome to the X-Men. Hope you enjoy the experience, or hope you survive the experience, rather. And that's another thing that I've seen happen time and again too. So at Gungnir, we are going to be publishing people that haven't necessarily worked in comics before, or maybe gotten the spotlight they deserve. But it's not just going to be, here's your gig, sink or swim. You can drive 120 miles an hour right into a brick wall. No, it's going to be, here's how you drive this car, and here's how you bring it home. So that's important to me too. And when Matt came to me, even more than my own creative freedom as a writer, that was the big North Star right out of the gate.
Well, and I would say, you know what, when I used to have a resume that would go out, I would always have career goal at the top, to have fun. And I would always get asked, what kind of career goal is that? And I said, you know what, I want to make things that I can be proud of with great people, and I want to have fun doing it. And I would say this team, and it's so much like this. It's so much more than some deep philosophy and doing good things and fostering new ideas. It's like, this is a really personal experience, and that's what I think we're going to bring to everything. I mean, with the editing that Steve and I are doing in here, we're not just editing. We're not like grammar people just doing that. We're also trying to produce and to nudge and to encourage people to do the best possible work they can.
Yeah, and I would say, just to add to those two, in my early days working in music, there was an executive named Dave Waxman at Ultra Records. Mm-hmm. And he always told me that when he was listening to a new song to decide if they should sign it and put it out, he would always make sure they sent it to him as an MP3, and never would listen to it on SoundCloud or other services of that ilk at the time. I would ask why, and he was like, because your eyes are the most deceptive thing to your ears. Because you see 10 million streams, you're going to think it's a great song, but you want to listen to the song and decide if it's great on its own. And we have a very similar approach, where it's great to have creators that have huge fan bases. Obviously, that helps the marketing, but that's tertiary to Jim and Steve and I's, hope and vision of finding voices and creators who are just excellent, right? All the other marketing things, to me, are secondary, tertiary. I'm trying to find great stories by great creators that may not get a chance because they're not great at the marketing. That, to me, is such a great creator is not necessarily great at the marketing, right? That's why they're a creator. They're not a marketer. So being able to find those voices, foster them, as Steve said, and bring them to the market is something that we're really excited about.
And so let's talk about the products that you do have out right now. What books? I've got two of them with me. I've got Chupacabra, which I also believe you wrote, right, Matt?
Chupacabra, I did write. Yeah, I did that in partnership with a studio called Exile Content Studios. They're owned by Candle Media, film studio, and they had worked. I had this pitch for a film, and they thought it'd be great to start as a graphic novel, and we were able to get a deal done and bring that to market. Steve edited it. Goons and Goblins, an amazing artist out of Chicago, inked and colored the whole thing, and I believe Dave Sharp lettered it. And And
So this is
we're
the one
really proud of that book. It's a really fun, high school.
That's the one I haven't read. I've read this one here. This is the one you also wrote, right, Matt?
That one I co-wrote with my team at Hero Projects that does a lot of the custom work in music and sports. I wrote that with Morgan Rosenblum, and the story was created with Johnny Handler and Pete Russo as well. And there's a community called the Mutant Cats that we worked with that owns the base IP that we evolved it from, and it's a zany world.
Oh, okay. So, it's based on a community that already exists?
Yeah, like an online community that has about 5,000 members that loves cats and mutants, and we took a lot of inspiration from that, worked with them over the last 3 years to turn their characters into something completely unique and original.
Oh, okay. So I'll be honest, when I opened the book up, when I opened the box up, they come in these amazing boxes, by the way. I got excited because I thought it was a Ukla the Mock.
Wait a minute, who mentioned that? I can't remember who brought that up early in our partnership, Medney. I'm having a hard time thinking all the way back. Who said that? It's to me who mentioned who had to. Anyway, I don't know. This is a funny coincidence, Omar.
I haven't talked to anybody about the book, just you guys. The first.
Steve is being facetious about his own notes that he had early on.
Oh, okay. That was him.
I'm shocked Matt was not already aware of Ukla the Mock. I mean, maybe not the right age group to you and me to have grown up and been watching Cartoon Network in 1993 and being really frightened about what was supposedly going to happen in the far-flung year of 1994.
Yeah, right around the there was a band called Ukla the Mock too, based on that cartoon.
But the Mukonga's a fun and special character in there.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I like this book, and I can't wait to read this one here. This is the Tales of Blood, huh?
Yeah. Chupacabra is a lot of fun. And then we also, outside of the comics, graphic novel space, we also put out a handful of prose books for the fans of animated shows like Final Space, created by a guy named Olin Rogers. If you haven't seen Final Space, highly recommend. It's one of my favorite animated shows. So we put out this book of theirs, Forward as Always, which is prose novel. It's really, really fun. Jake Sidwell, who co-wrote it with Olin, scored Final Space. So them as a tag team, this book is just an amazing science fiction adventure. And then recently, as of last week, we put out Stefan Petruccia's The Stars Within, also a prose novel. And if you're a big fan of the Marvel prose series, Stefan wrote the Deadpool and Captain America books back in 2016. So if you're a fan of those, highly recommend going and finding this at your local Barnes & Nobles. So these two books from some amazing creatives just came out from us as well.
So you guys do comics and prose novels. So what made you get into the prose aspect of things?
I love prose. So my first novel, Beyond Kuiper, The Galactic Star Alliance, is a prose. I just think that they're fantastic medium. Prose and graphic novels. We're not doing floppies. We're just doing the graphic novels and prose, and maybe some art books and some other iterations like that Steve has pitched that I think are really, really fun. But I love how a prose book allows your imagination to draw the pictures, and I love how a graphic novel brings you into a film on 2D paper. And both of those mediums have a special place in my heart that I don't discriminate either way. So we really just try to look. We have an amazing pitch, Jim and I, from an awesome creator. I won't say who, but a British guy. So I'm sure Jim will realize who I'm talking about, where the pitch is something that we've already greenlit, and we're just now deciding if we're going to move it forward as a prose or a graphic novel. And then originally, I think it was pitched as a graphic novel, but as Jim and I have been working through it, we kind of think that a prose version of it might do better for the idea. So for us, it's really there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever fits the story, because it's story first, and then we figure out the medium that we're going to share it in.
So how do people, like, how would somebody that has an idea be able to pitch it to you gentlemen? Like, how does that work?
Oh, you guys answer that.
When it was first announced that I was with it, I got, I think, a Facebook message from this British writer just being like, "Hey, I'm a fan," but I had reached out to him years before because I was such a fan of his stuff that we already had this kind of thing, and he's like, "I have an idea," and I was like, "Well, then we want to hear it," and
Yeah.
that's how it started.
Hey,
And then your job is to say, yeah, I'll foster you. And
Exactly.
get
I
some
mean, usually my job is to be the bad cop.
he just backed out.
Okay. I gotta see that. Your job is to say you're not ready, kid.
I mean, yeah, to be
Darn
honest, but not in that blunt way. I was mentored in the business by someone who's extremely brusque. So I'm actually a softie compared to him. I mean, but I spent 20 years showing him pitches multiple times a year and books multiple times a year, and he said, if you want to know what's good about it, that's what your mom's for. Here's what's not professional yet, and has to get better. So,
you brought your mom into the combo. I love that.
It's so good.
So, but I'm not that aggressive. But the fact is that sometimes people aren't ready, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I started going to Comic-Cons and trying to break in when I was 12 years old, and I didn't make it in, quote unquote, because you're always breaking in. You've never made it. You're always making it. It took me almost 20 years. So, I mean, it is a long game. But the key too is that, like, critiques, even if we have a rejection, the critiques are constructive. It's not just like, hit the bricks, kid. Why don't you, the world needs ditch diggers too. It's this is exciting and here's what could improve and things like that. So while I am the bad cop, I'm not, hopefully not the asshole cop. It is just, there's things sometimes do have some more road to go, but that's just part of the process. When I pitch something, sometimes it needs more time. All of us, I would say. I'm not going to speak for the other guys, but so yeah, like if something's ready, it's exciting. If it's not, here's what'll get it there, and maybe they come back with that. Maybe they come back with something else. Maybe they go somewhere else and come back to us with a new idea. All those things are fine.
And by the way, Omar, that's why Steve was picked out of a sea of people that I know, is that mentality and an ability to parse.
So, Jim, you've been at the game for a long time too. You've seen a lot of talent come and go. And how do you differ when you get? I'm sorry, I guess, how does one even pitch ideas to you, find folks anyway? Like, do you guys do a talent search once a year? Are you guys just open to submissions at any time? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we always take submissions, but yeah, Jim, why don't you?
I was going to say, if it starts with a good idea, then the way I edit, the way I work is, well, it's like this. I once had an agent here in LA say to me, because I was telling him how I was becoming friends with a producer, and he was like, hey, it's show business, it's not show friends. And he has proved himself wrong every single time. We have lawyers and we have agents to be in the show business. This is about show friends. So immediately upon hearing something that I like the idea of, I just try to talk and hear the person out and have this discussion. And, okay, maybe too many times I'll suggest that they should put a celestial egg in the center of their story to erupt. But, beyond that, I just let the discussion go. I let them see what happens, and I try to act, especially depending on where the project is, like a development exec. But usually that's not even controlling their story. It's asking to really understand the story they want to tell.
So because things are so much, well, I think so much easier now than because Steve was talking about pitching stories and going to Comic-Cons. That's what you had to do like in order to try to get seen, you would have to go to a Comic-Con and hope they're having some kind of talent search. Hopefully there's an editor there and you have to bring your artwork with you. I'm not even sure how writers broke it in. I don't even know how that happened, if going to comic conventions. But now that we live in an age of like somebody can hit you up on Facebook, how do you determine who to give people, like who to give the time to? Because at any moment you guys could get an email like, hey, I've got this really good idea that would make a great comic.
Well, I think you actually just brought up a great moment because so things are different from when I was breaking in. But I don't know if they're easier because at the same time, the field has widened exponentially. Like it's been a progression. Back in the day, if you didn't live in, not that it was impossible, but most of the folks I knew and got, guidance from early on had broken in because they lived in New York, and especially if you were a visual artist and you could physically just walk into the Marvel and DC offices and say, boom, here's my work. Now, I did that when I was 12, and I asked if I could see Grant Morrison, and they were like, he's in Scotland and you're 12. But that's a true story, by the way. But so there were more limiting factors. And then, of course, in the era you're talking about, quote unquote, my era, if such a thing exists, you had to have the finances to fly to a convention and meet someone in person. I did a literal can drive when I was younger to go to my first San Diego Comic-Con. My parents said if I could save up enough money for the plane tickets, they would cover the hotel. So I raised like $500 in cans, which could get you a flight to California back in 1997.
Good old days.
And I went. So, but the counterpoint is this, now you can essentially approach publishers from everywhere. So if you're approaching alongside exponentially more people.
Yes.
That brings things around to Facebook, things like that. How do you decide? So when I was younger, I would, and even still, when people ask me how to break in, I talk about how, and this is something my own mentor told me, the first thing of pitching is not your idea. It's the idea of working with you. So, and what does that mean? It means that you have to present yourself, not too thirsty, as the kids would say, but beyond that, as a professional, right? And it's harder than you think, or less common than you think. I mean, when I was still trying to break in, I remember being at the urinal, and I knew Jim Valentino was next to me. Because I know who the people that run companies are, and he was the editor-in-chief or publisher, whatever the head of Image was called.
Image at the time, yeah.
Right? But we're sitting at the urinal. Okay, that's not a time when a professional tries to get a job. But sure enough, some other clown in that bathroom straight up approached Jim, literally where his business was in his hands, and asked him to pitch a book. Right? So that's an absurd example that's real. But
I was hoping you would tell me that guy is none other than David Finch.
And that was Jim Kruger. No, so, but the point is, that was a young Matt Medney.
Nice.
No, so obviously you don't have to go in person anymore, but I think that still stands in a way, in spirit, right? So yes, like we're on Facebook, someone can message us. We're on social media, someone can message us. But most of us say which of our social medias are public and which are private. And most of us say whether we do business there or not. And so to me, that's the new urinal, like, for example, my Facebook is, I like that. For example, my Facebook, I mean, I don't think I'm accepting new friends now because the world is on fire. But when I did, it said very openly, I don't do business on Facebook. This is personal. So if you message me on Facebook, I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but no, I won't answer it. Because that's the same to me as not reading the submission guidelines, which are you generally posted right on a website. Again, back in my day, it was go to the website. You could ask someone from Image how to pitch, and they would say, follow the submission guidelines on the website. So, I think it's changed, but in a way, it's just been redressed because it still is, know how to be professional, know how to present yourself professionally. That is the first way. That's the way to getting someone to listen to your idea.
I think
if you seem like a nightmare, barring, No, I'll say that if you haven't broken in yet and you seem like a nightmare, then having the best idea possible will not matter because you'll never get to tell it. Now, if you've already established and you seem like a nightmare, that's a different discussion, of course, because you can point to your track record and say, ha ha, live the nightmare. But if you're not there yet, then yeah, you have to know, whether it's in person or through the internet, through social media, how to present yourself. And so, yeah, it's not that, things have changed, but a lot of the motifs and themes behind them, I think, haven't changed. Those are kind of eternal, even if how they're applied are definitely much different than when I was younger.
Yeah, and to piggyback off what Steve said, I think whether it's in person or digitally, there is a clear delineation between people who are putting in the effort because this is what really matters to them. They really want to do it. They've done their own homework to understand what professional is, and those who just think it's fun and a trend, right? And really trying to delineate between those two. And then the ones that it's clear that they've put in that time because this matters to them, we're going to put in that time too to give feedback, positive or negative.
Wow. I really like what Steve said about the new public restrooms.
Well, I mean, social media is the toilet, so it seems appropriate. But
yeah, no, it makes sense, right? You do have to. I guess you have to put a barrier up sometimes because people don't know how to, especially when you're on social media and they can easily find you, like when you can become approachable, especially when it comes to business too. Like I've got a pitch for a story. So how long have you guys been around? How long is when was the first book published? When did all this start, like officially?
Yeah, so I mean, the first book was March, Jim? The Aoki book. Yeah, it was last March or May. I can't remember which one. It was an M month, but we did a Hero Quest, which was Steve Aoki and Jim Kruger. Amazing book. And about a year before that, about late February, early March of 23 is when I had approached Steve originally on the idea of Gungnir. And that's when we started planning it and thinking about it. And then Jim came on in about 6 to 9 months later when we were working on Hero Quest together. And yeah, we've been on the journey for just about that long.
Jim, I guess it has been over a year now, hasn't it, Medney? It feels
almost 2 years.
Feels like I was just raking you over the coals on that contract, and now here we are.
Wait,
goes like that.
You could change the contract? What?
Clearly, you didn't read the submission guidelines.
I'm too trusting. I'm too trusting. It's always the case. I just feel like, yeah, we're friends. Let's do something great together. Here we go. Now.
He used the friends card. That always works.
My gosh.
Jim,
it's always the same. Always the same.
You have written some amazing stuff. You have written Justice, and you've written EarthX, which I'm a huge fan of both of those.
Thank you.
And I'm tripping over the fact that you were the reason behind Combo Man.
Yes. Well, I worked at Marvel and did ads for them for a number of years and worked my way up to creative director while being there. So there's a lot of stuff in the late 90s that either you love or don't love. But I wrote some great ads that I'm still proud of.
When you're playing, you and Steve have played with other people's toys. And at the end of the day, you have to put them back. Unless you're doing some kind of alternate reality, I guess, which is like kind of like EarthX, you and Alex Ross working on that together. But I don't know how this is like the opposite, right? It's like you have your own toys that you made yourself out of clay or whatever.
Well, it is, yes, but that doesn't mean like there's a project that Matt and Steve have only announced a little bit that I'll be writing, for example. Mm-hmm. And it's like a lifelong goal to write, and yet it's still a toolbox.
Go deep into it. No, this is the platform. Talk all about Never.
All right. Do you want me to say the title of the book?
Yeah, do it all up. It's all good here.
All right. So I've been obsessed with having it's a lifelong journey. I have a 3-book project that's going to come out through Gungnir So I guess I'm the Gungnir of the group here.
Oh, well, you are now.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. But I'm going to do, and this will be prose again. These will be books, but
These are books without pictures, folks. By the way, for people that don't know what prose are.
But maybe there'll be a picture on the cover, maybe.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm going to be doing to Peter Pan what I did to Earth X, like telling the understory, how it all fits together, and it's going to span Peter's entire life.
It's amazing.
And you said it was a 3-book project?
It's a 3-book project.
Man, that's cool.
Okay. It's set in 3 different eras, in fact, and one of the moments in it, one of the lines in it, and I can't say it here because I can't wreck this, I think is one of the best things I've ever written. Just the line, the piece of dialogue, and I think everything came out of that one moment's dialogue. And so,
I'm going to spoil it, Jim. He just says Rosebud at the end, actually.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to do that.
So this has been, you said, a lifelong dream. So when you say 3 books, you obviously already had ideas that made it into 1 book, and then you were like, no, I think I've got enough for 2, and now it's like 3.
What it was is I was pitching to the studio exec this idea I had for a Peter Pan story, and then said, well, and if there was a sequel, I would see it from this perspective and do this. And he said, well, you should write that story because I love that story too. And so that got me thinking. And then I was like, well, if there need to be 3, where do I want this to land? No pun intended, because Peter can fly. Sorry.
Yeah, I like that.
But that whole thing, and so I got more and more excited as I was fleshing it out. And it's been one of these projects that I feel like I've been working on for 10 years, just collecting thoughts, just collecting ideas, and how this thing could work together with this, and what's the relationship between this and this. And the promise of so much of, especially J.M. Barrie's work, is going to be in this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, I'm so excited. I think people are going to freak out. I can't even, like, I just want to say it all right now. I want to, like, give away the dialogue and the plot and all of it, and say how book 2 works and why that's this thing, and then this thing that happens with sewing that shows up in book 2, and then there's the thing with the dagger in 3, and I'm muting myself right now.
I love that you compared it to Meets Earth X. That's so badass. Were you a fan of the books, or was it the Disney movie, or?
It wasn't the Disney movie. Oh, well, the first half hour of Hook I think is fantastic, but then once they get there, I'm like, oh, I don't care about Rufio. I don't care about any of that.
I don't care about Rufio. There's a whole generation that loves Rufio.
I know.
Wow. We've been working together so well, but I don't care about Rufio, man.
I know.
Fighting words.
Look, part of Peter Pan is tragedy, and I think it's actually, it's things like that. I think it's things like that amazing Mark Forster movie Finding Neverland. It's even thinking about things, and even Lost Boys, and not that there are vampires in this, but even thinking about the way they're, like, Peter Pan has taken on this iconic kind of even way to even suggest a certain psychology that we have, a certain approach we have, and then you have things just dealing with even his promise that to die would be a very great adventure, or the idea that he's not always a good guy. Like how mean was it to chop off Hook's hand and feed it to the crocodile and then laugh?
Wait, just out of curiosity, Jim, what made you go the route of novel and not graphic novel for that story?
Because I wanted the depiction, or I wanted the way people come into it to be in their minds. I wanted them to see it on their own, and there were certain things as I was describing them or thinking visually that just felt like, you know what, this is too big an idea to be drawn as the third panel in a page or even as a double page spread. It just felt like I wanted the expanse. I wanted there to be this sense of magic that people bring into it themselves as they visualize this. And someone may visualize it like in an animated world, but someone may visualize it like a Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movie. You know, it's like I want that relationship with the reader, because every reader brings their own experiences, their own set of like visuals and things that they love to something. And this book series is going to be as philosophical, going back to how this discussion began, as as things are dealt with and concepts are thought of. And there are other things about Peter Pan that just make it so special. One, it's the only fairy tale that breaks the fourth wall and begs the audience to do something in response to it by clapping to save Tinkerbell. And two, I'm so sorry, but now you got me going. You got me going. I'm so sorry. But two, it's the fairy tale that Disney got wrong. Their interpretation of Peter Pan is completely wrong compared to what Jamberry wanted at the beginning. Jamberry's whole thing was that there's something terrible about not growing up. There's a curse to not growing up. There's a curse to like not maturing and not becoming a better person, not allowing life to transform you. And all that stuff started working itself through my mind and all that kind of thing. And then I was like, well, what's the story under it? What's the story? What's the secret that I don't know?
Okay, I gotta ask you and Steve if this has ever happened after you gave me this amazing pitch, by the way. Have you ever been emailed a pitch and you were both like, son of a bitch, that's my idea, and now this guy's gonna think I stole it? Has that ever happened to you guys?
Yeah, in all honesty, that hasn't happened to me. There's been pitches I wish I thought of.
Yeah, that's happened a bunch.
But I'm sure it has happened. That one, though, knock on wood, has not hit my desk yet. But plenty of times, someone pitches something, and I'm like, God damn it!
That's right.
Or I see an announcement, or more often, I see an announcement, and like I'll tell you because I'm envious of it. The first time this happened to me was the Aftershock book, The Kaiju Score, which is a heist movie set during a kaiju movie, basically. And I was just like, man, that is so cool and such a simple idea. I mean, I was beating myself up for not coming up with that for a long, long time. But then they crushed it anyway, so that's fine. And that's just a moment of excitement for me. But no one has pitched something that I had really on deck, I don't think, or on the vision board. But hey, could happen tomorrow.
Because after Jim's amazing pitch, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what if somebody pitches the exact same thing but a graphic novel format? Jim's gonna lose that dude's email.
I don't think anyone's pitching what Jim pitched when you dive into it. It's really
that's really awesome. So that's in the works. When is the first one? Like, when is that first book coming out?
Q1, Q2 next year.
Oh, 2026. Okay. That's great.
Really excited. I mean, we have a slate of 9 books still coming out this year, which we're really excited about. But Steve, do you want to talk about either a Diplomat or one of the others? Free reign to talk about whatever you want to that you're working on.
Sure. Well, I usually talk about the Diplomat, but I'm going to put that to you, actually. So what we are doing, at minimum, a 2 graphic novel series, although I have ideas to pitch Matt for a bookend, that is going to be where not the main character, but the connective tissue is going to be the world versus the actual lead. So we're doing a story set in the ancient past of a new world. And then we're doing a story set in the present of this world, And the two stories are going to play off each other. They're all a lot about sort of how history works, how it's written by the winners, or at least the people in power, how it can be rewritten. And it's about language, and the power of language is magic as well. The power of language to define reality, sort of a magic version of the fact that, like, whether we know it or not, and I don't know if folks here speak other languages, I would never assume, but I can't stop talking about it. So folks may know I lived in Russia for a while in the 2000s. Even simple things, like in that language, in English, we say the snow falls. In Russian, we say the snow goes. And then go has no ending, right? So there is like a cultural note there when you actually analyze it. Or the color red didn't exist. The color orange didn't exist in Russia until after the Soviet period. Orange was just a version of red. And that isn't super important, but it's also so fundamental. We think of the primary colors. These are what they are. The secondary colors, and one of them just didn't exist. But light blue and dark blue were two distinct colors culturally and in the language. So we're doing this big historical epic. It's going to have just a lot of investigation, once again, of those nooks in history, the way history itself changes depending on who's in power and who's taking charge. But look, that's all the sitting in college writing the report sell of it. At the end of the day, we're doing big, bold fantasy storytelling. I haven't really done a fantasy epic. And because we're doing two time periods, it's allowing us to do quote unquote high fantasy and low fantasy, if you want to follow those, where it's allowing us to do both sword and sandal and modern science fantasy in the present as well. And those things are really, really exciting to me. And I'll say this as well. You were talking about formats. The plan as of now is to take a format that I've really embraced. I'm not going to say pioneered, because the minute I say that, someone will have done it first, and that's fine, but that I've embraced on Scarlet Witch. For folks who follow that series, in issue 3, I wanted to get out of the way for Sarah Pichelli, who was my collaborator at that time. So most of the issue was told in what I've called a Prince Valiant style of storytelling. There was splashes only to give her room to do these gorgeous pieces of art, and then there was a reduced amount of text boxes, but they were bigger, like you had room for more information. So it's a hybrid style. It's not necessarily a straight comic book. It's more of a flip book or a montage book. We'll find the name for it, but what it has been, it's been exciting for me because it's allowed my artistic collaborators to really unleash themselves, use the whole page, and it's pushed me as well as a creator to focus in on what the key image to move the story along could be, page by page. So not only is this going to be working in fantasy, which I haven't done a ton of, across 2 different time periods, one called Ancient Violence, the other called Dangerous History, but it will also be working in a format that, again, I'm sure I didn't come up with. Someone did it before, but that I've really been, it's been exciting to me. It's been challenging to me. And the result is just these gorgeous, gorgeous art, narrative art books. That's really what it is. They're going to be narrative art books for this run.
Yeah. It sounds like you all are going to be busy. How are you going to be? You're still writing other stuff too, right, Steve?
I got a house and a wedding to pay for, my friend.
Okay. That's what's going on.
But the
people ask me I write so much, I'm like, let me show you what it costs to live in Boston. And they're like, oh, I get it.
Man, you're going to be busy. No sleep.
But then again, I'm talking to people from LA whose rent is probably not dissimilar to mine, but probably less as far as what they're getting for this price. So I don't expect a lot of sympathy here.
I'm really excited about those 2 books that Steve has cooking. We talked about this like sort of lost journal, atypical format, and I want to really lean into that. Like even have the book leather bound and really make it feel like this ancient fantasy, sword sandal, fantasy sci-fi vibe all around. Because to me, when you're printing a book, and as you know, Omar, because you have 2 of them. They're hardcover. They're pretty beautiful. We have a saying, if you're going to burn down a tree or cut down a tree to make a book, you might as well make it beautiful, right? So all of our books are like really high quality because they're art pieces just as much as they are books. So to us, that's really exciting. And The Diplomat, which is another prose book that Steve and I are co-writing, I'm really excited about. It's a chess match, down in the dumps main character who comes back in a revenge. I won't say much more than that, but I had this idea 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even more. I shared it with Steve. He elevated it to a really interesting new place. And I know Steve hasn't written a prose before, so it's going to be really fun to collaborate on that.
At what point, when you all were coming up with the idea of Gungnir, did you all decide go straight to graphic novel format instead of doing single issues? Because you have a lot of new publishing companies that come up, and like I remember when TKO came out, they were like, "We're gonna do single issues and we're gonna do trade paperbacks same day." And yeah, so at what point did you guys go, you know what, let's just do a graphic novel?
Well, I think there's also an inherent difference between a trade paperback and a graphic novel, right? Trades are, roller coasters of single issues all put together, whereas a graphic novel might not have those bookends every chapter. And that was really important, is that we want to tell a completed story to the fan. So our books, they're approached as graphic novels. They're not approached as, 5 floppies and put together. And right. It's a slight difference, but for us, I think that is really important. Our first original, we have a couple of reprints coming in Q2, but we have a book called Last Breeds that is coming out June 17th this year. And I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I was talking to some creators that I love, a guy named Gregory and Jonathan, and we were just brainstorming. And I said, I have this crazy idea for like an asshole Tarzan story, and I was like, it's this asshole Tarzan in a post-apocalyptic Book of Eli, I Am Legend type world. And I jotted down an idea, and they came back and rejiggered it into Last Breeds, which is, really amazing story about an apocalypse brought on by a food company that degraded everyone's DNA by just leaning too far into GMOs. And everyone that ate all this food started having a breakdown of their genome. And now kids can't live past the age of 16.
It's nonfiction is what he's saying, actually.
It's nonfiction, exactly. And, some amount of time after the fall, this girl who's 16 plus shows up at our main character, Bale's house. And it's like she shouldn't be able to be alive. So maybe she's a cure. And we have Bale having to find a way to bring her and our guardian across from Texas to San Diego, where the last lab is. And he does it with a herd of alpha animals. And it's a really wild adventure. It's a duochromatic coloring style. So everything's in greens and reds. It's really unique. We're really excited about it. And that was just, a crazy idea that we fostered this amazing team to put together. And now it's coming to life. We just locked the print file yesterday, and we're pretty pumped about it. There's some really amazing support from some writers that you guys know. I think there's no reason not to bring it up. Scott Snyder is a big fan of the book, and we're really excited about his support on it, and we're really excited about everyone having a chance to read it.
He is excited. I think that I get more texts about Last Breeds, a book I didn't work on, than the books that I do work on. But let me tell you, Matt is not lying about his excitement.
How are you all dealing with distribution? Who distributes the books now?
So right now we have our Gungnir.books.com we have a Shopify. We do direct to consumer for all of our books as well. We also have some awesome merch and posters and all that stuff associated with every book, some hoodies, etc. And then in bookstores and direct market, it's Diamond. We're working through all of the things going on with Diamond right now, and but everything is business as usual currently. And we hope nothing but the best for them to be able to navigate their business, but for us, it's not impacting us currently. And yeah, it's business as usual.
I want to jump in quickly and say this is another reason I'm working with Gungnir. I spent, for the past time working with other publishers. Another thing that I often see happening that we're trying to work with and grow past when you do new types of books. Now, of course, at license with license IP, that usually means quote unquote diverse books, but any type of new books. The philosophy often seems to be Field of Dreams. And for better or worse, the creative arts are not, at least in my experience, Field of Dreams, which is to say, publishers want to do this book and they say, oh, look, I'll take my own experience. Like, oh, look, we did this new book with a gay lead. Oh, but we're going to market it and we're going to sell it. We're going to distribute it the same way we distribute Batman, right? Or Spider-Man. This doesn't have to be about DC or Marvel. Right? Here's the thing. You're setting that book up to fail because there's no guarantee that the audience you're looking for is going to the places that buy books through Diamond. There's no guarantee that they feel welcome in a in like a weekly, Android's Dungeon type comic book store. They might be, by the way. This is not an indictment of comic stores. They just don't know, right? Maybe they live in a comic desert. They've only seen The Simpsons, and they think every comic book person is like comic book guy. I mean, there's not a stores in the country, right? So, and it's very frequent refrain when I was younger, and even when I'm in comics, and people say, "Oh, they still make those," right? So, key is that there's a gap there that isn't being addressed. You have to use every distribution model you can. You have to, in fact, if you have the power and agency to forge new distribution models. So this is once again one of the things that drew me to Gungnir. Like, yeah, we want to showcase new voices, underrepresented voices, exciting creators that maybe haven't gotten the spotlight that they should. All those things. We want to tell new kinds of stories. But we're not just putting them out there and like burning some sage and what have you. We want to offer every way of getting from us to you that's possible. And, I'm talking more about this in a lot of ways than some of the sort of like creative buzzwordy things, because this stuff is important. I've seen so many books that are incredible, both as a reader and as a creator, die on the vine. And within the bounds of our power, we can't have that happen. Like, you have to do the extra work to reach underrepresented audiences because they may not be in those places. They may not be in your weekly comic book stores. They may not even be using things like Amazon, for whatever reason. I'm not even going to get into that, but they just may not use it. So one of the things that drew me to this company that's exciting to me isn't just that we're doing new kinds of books and pushing beyond sort of the capes paradigm. It's that we know the story doesn't end when we go to the printer. The story ends when it reaches your hands. And that's really, I mean, that's vitally important. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. I mean, there's, as Steve said, there's, an untold amount of people that go to Comic-Cons, way more than the amount of people that go to comic book shops on a Wednesday. And we want to find new ways, innovative ways to get interesting stories into people's hands that we know love this stuff.
But all that said, each one of us here loves comic shops, and we know we're in partnership with comic shops, and we want to drive more people into comic shops. Like we're not trying to do something isolated from the comic book shop community, but something that embraces them and helps them be successful as we want to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. To Jim's point, there's a group of people that have never been into a comic book shop and maybe would if they start reading more books. Maybe they just go to the conventions and they love those. But maybe if we can find ways to get books in their hands, they then decide to roam into their comic book shop on a Wednesday after. And we want to expand that community that goes into shops that reads these books and that is part of the whole community, not just the cinematic universes, but also part of the 2D print side of the comic book culture.
In improv terminology, we want to yes and those places, not cut them out.
Exactly.
Now, before we start wrapping up, I did want to ask what projects are coming out this year from Like, what can you talk about? And then I'm sure there are things you haven't announced yet. But yeah, what kind of projects are you all coming out with this year?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things that I can start mentioning is we have an amazing book coming out in July by Joe Harris, myself, and a guy named John Connolly, who's an aerospace engineer at a big aerospace company. I'm not allowed to say which one. That's like at the end of time, the last 7 sentient beings convene at the last black hole to discuss the trials and tribulations of the stardust ancestors they arose from. It's real heady. That one is really, really fun. We have a book by Don McNabb Stark called The Existence Equation. That's another science fiction heavy out there. What do you do if your 2 options are to become an android void of human emotion, but able to travel the stars, or stay on Earth and know the stars were within reach, but you couldn't give up your humanity for it, and you stay a human on Earth? And that dichotomy is an allegory for the ridiculousness of having to put the idea of college on an 18-year-old to decide their future at 18. And in this world, you have to decide if you're going to be an android or if you're going to be a human at the age of 18. It's really allegorical. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it grabs onto like some of my favorite sci-fi things, from Blade Runner to Logan's Run to, you name it. And it's really this idea of choosing immortality amongst the stars, or embracing a finite life surrounded by your loved ones.
Jim edited it and did an amazing job punching it up and making it fantastic. Those are sort of the key books. We have some second printings of books that I had done in the past that we have the rights to, that we want to add to our sort of a booktography. One's called Stable, another one's called Remnant, both with the Hero Projects team, same team that brought you Mutant Cats. Those are coming out this year as a second printing, which we're really excited about. Art Deco, Art Crime Noir is Remnant, and Stable is a space thriller. 3 arcs, 2 worlds, 1 chance at survival is sort of the kitschy title to it. It's a Earth is dying, and we've built 3 arcs to bring 300,000 people to a safe planet. And who are going to be those 300,000 people out of the 8+ billion that are going to be left behind to die? From the original printing to the second printing, Steve has really punched up the dialogue and given some great edits that we've brought into it. So we're really excited about those new versions of those books coming out too. And then in 26, we have a whole slate of books from new creators, including stuff from Steve and Jim that are just getting finished up now. So we're really excited about the next 4 years. We have books scheduled through 28.
That's awesome. To me, if you can hear sort of all the stuff we're talking about, like the exciting thing to me about the kind of, like, there is no standard Gungnir book. There's no standard Gungnir art style. Other than, and in the case of the book, like, to me, it feels like, Matt can retcon everything I say in a second, but he's heard versions of this from me. Like, this to me feels like the kind of sci-fi books you would see. We're doing the kind of big idea pulp sci-fi books that would happen if, how can I say this? If people like Asimov and Carl Sagan were in the George Lucas seat, and that doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with Star Wars. I love Star Wars, but it, like, this to me is sort of big, heady, conceptual science fiction, the likes you would see in things like Foundation, the likes you would see in things like The Day the Earth Stood Still. It doesn't all have to be about sort of sci-fi pillars, but that's also sort of what, at least me, I love, but also I kind of feel like is missing from the modern landscape. It's hard to not do a big space opera now in a lot of ways, because that's become so ubiquitous, and we may even have one. But what it's exciting to me is, like, these are fearless books. These are big, bold, meaty concepts in books that take the time to interrogate them. I think of, what's the one I brought up when we first talked, Mandy? Was it Rendezvous with Rama?
Yeah.
Like which is about the discovery of this massive structure on the edge of the solar system, and people going out. I believe that's an Asimov book, but I could also be wrong. And people going out to investigate it and what they find within. And that type of stuff is exciting to me. It's the kind of storytelling and sort of love of both a tip of a hat to and an evolution of pulp in a way that some issues of Planetary were, for example. Like, I mean, Rendezvous with Rama, think about the when they discover the issue where they discover Galactus, but it's not really Galactus in Planetary, right? And it's all about these angels who want to catalog every single bit of this structure, and who are happy to stay there because it'll take them billions of years to catalog everything. And by that time, this giant structure will have reached another solar system and they'll be fine. We want to put science fiction and fantasy out there that is, when you hear the idea and you're like, kind of like we're talking about with submissions, damn, why didn't I think about that? Damn, I need to know more about that. And we want to get people thinking that, these are the real reasons I joined. It's not, the creative freedom is easy, but the excitement, the stepping out into areas that I've always thought were sort of lacking. That's what really, really excites me. I frequently say these are modern pulp sci-fi. It's modern pulp fantasy, and those things, like, that's the stuff I would read as a kid, and I'm really, really excited for everybody to see it. I also just have to say, Aeon, which Matt mentioned, probably my favorite book from Gungnir, the one about the end of the universe with the different representatives. That was a pleasure to edit, but it was a pleasure to read just as much. It's the tip of the iceberg for what's coming, but it is the kind of book we do. It's going to take you places you've never been, maybe even you've never thought about going or were possible to visit, and then it's going to tear them apart and get every creative calorie they can out of them, and that's what we do.
Man, it seems like you guys are gung-ho about this coming year and the next 4 years. That's awesome.
About Gungnir, yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, I love it. Gung-ho for Gungnir.
I like that. Jim is going to be cranking out these. Did you say the title? Was it Never?
No, it's called Never a Neverland. Or no, sorry, Never a Never Boy.
Oh, okay. Thought it was Never something, but I didn't want to assume. But with the upcoming schedule that you all have, in Steve saving money for his wedding and house, and so it means he's going to be busy doing all this stuff. How much could you possibly do? Like, I guess my question is, if people are pitching ideas to you all, what is the ultimate amount of books that you could put out in a month? Like, let's say a month, like July or something like that. What's the goal?
We're currently looking at getting to one book a month by 26, 27. As we've alluded to, they're not floppies, right? So they're full books that we really want to pay attention to. It'd be awesome in 2 or 3 years to get to 2 books a month. And I think that is a realistic goal for us to get to. It's a lot of editing, a lot of marketing, but we have some things in the pipe right now that we think if a couple of things go our way, we can unlock some opportunities to expand the team and be able to lift that sort of capacity.
That's what I want to hear. Okay. I have one last question, because obviously I love collected editions. What made you all decide to go hardcover instead of trades? Just out of curiosity, is it a personal taste? Or
my thing is, if you're gonna cut down a tree, might as well make it beautiful. That's like that's my sort of thought process on it. A lot of people have the opportunity to read, whether it's prose or graphic novels now digitally, whether it's on Global Comics or other, whether it's on Kindle for prose. And if you're gonna have a hardcover book, I really hope that after you're done reading it, it goes on a shelf, and a paperback, gets bent, and you might not leave it out because it's no longer in beautiful condition. But hardcovers stay pretty good for a long time. And the lifespan of the book is about 1% of it you reading it, and the other 99% it's on a shelf or in a drawer or in a closet. And we want it to be on a shelf.
I like
for the record, I want to say we're interested in planting trees too.
Like what Matt said, if you're going to kill a tree,
but that may be just to make more books. So
but I really like that honest answer. Gentlemen, I just want
for our 5-year, we're going to be planning.
I mean, listen,
the Gungnir.
Freebeard is watching us, right? So Freebeard is watching. We got to make sure that we're doing right by him.
Right. I want to thank you all for your time and talking about the company and the future and how it all got started. But before you leave, where can people follow, like, updates and things like, and books that are coming out and announcements? Where can people go for that?
Yeah, social media, Instagram and X, Twitter. Everything's at Gungnir Books. TikTok for now, unclear how that's going to go. But we have a newsletter too that you can sign up for from our website. We're excited about the future. I have to ask you one question, and maybe it's because I don't watch your channel enough. But what is the Forget Space Jam moniker?
I've never seen Space Jam, and I had to watch it. I lost a bet, and I had to watch it yesterday or the day before yesterday. I was 18, 19 when that movie came out, and people couldn't believe that I hadn't seen it. And then I was like, yeah, it was just okay. I was like, it's okay. It's not for me, but I'm happy that it brings a lot of people joy and nostalgia.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
You haven't seen it, Jim? I was in college when that movie came out, and I was busy doing other things, not watching Space Jam, dude. There's this weird era between like 96 to like 2001 that there's a lot of these movies that came out that I just didn't go to theater that much.
Omar's also never seen Men in Black or Independence Day.
Wait, I've seen those. It's just Space Jam. And I've seen Titanic, right?
Titanic, I mean, come on, you already know how it ends. So
that's a great movie. Shakespeare in Love. I've never seen Shakespeare in Love, and I think that won an Oscar.
But have you seen George Lucas in Love?
I did see that.
There you go. That's what really matters.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us, and thank you everybody for watching. Go and check out the website where you can keep updates and check out some of these books that they're coming out with, and hopefully we'll be doing an overview of them on the channel sometime soon. And any last words, gentlemen, before we take off?
Just thank you guys, and hopefully you enjoy the books.
All right. We are